Hello, welcome back to the Educated Franchisee educational series on FDDs. I'm Rick Bizio. I'm the author of The Educated Franchisee, and I'm a franchise coach. I work with individuals who want to be franchisees, or at least explore the idea of being a franchisee and try to help them make better decisions, help them become better educated before they actually make a decision and hopefully get into a position where they have a higher potential for success. My guest today is Nancy Lennard. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Rick. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So this is part 4. We've already covered, items 1 through 7, and we're going to start with item 8 here. And just for a matter of introduction, real quick, Nancy Lennard, of course, is one of the preeminent franchise attorneys in the United States when it comes to working with franchisees, helping them better understand the contracts and that sort of thing. So we are honored to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Very good. So item 8 in the FDD is restrictions on sources of products and services. So talk to us about that. What's it about and why is it important?
Pretty self-explanatory. So it's the disclosure of what a franchisee is obligated to purchase and from whom. So if there are restrictions, and a franchisor often, it's actually pretty typical that a franchisor will actually get certain sources that they get their products from, or equipment, or point of sale system, or anything else, or supplies from a particular source. The franchisor often gets a kickback, which people don't realize, but they do. And they require the franchisees to purchase from those sources. Those restrictions, those sources that are required, or those restrictions on where you can or cannot purchase, are in this section. This is what this section is intended to disclose to you as a potential investor in the brand, that there are specific sources and only those sources that you can purchase from. And most systems have that. Most systems don't let you just freely go and purchase products from, or equipment from, any source that you want. They usually have relationships that they've established and want you to buy. So whether it's a hair salon, blow dry bar kind of place where they want you to buy all of the hair products from specific vendors, or it's a fitness franchise where they want you to purchase all of your equipment from specific vendors. And again, it's because the franchisor has worked with those vendors. The franchisor understands the quality of the products and equipment and so forth that you're going to be purchasing. There's uniformity because of that. So if you think of a fast food chain and you go into one in South Carolina, and you go into another one in Pennsylvania and another one in Florida, you would hope that they all have very similar places to eat. The tables and the chairs are all very similar. The look is very similar. It's all part of the branding. It's all part of being in a franchise. And so that's the purpose behind it. But as I said, the reality is there's also usually a kickback that the franchisor gets some money out of it as well. So, but they will be disclosed. That's what's in item 8.
Okay. Yeah, I remember back when I was with Popeyes back in the 1990s, and we got into a conversation on the fryers, and one of the potential franchisees said, well, I want to buy my own fryers. And not really having thought much about it, I was like, well, let me get back to you on that. And I went back to the guys and I said, why can't he buy his own fryers? And they're like, well, there has to be a recovery time. When that drops that chicken in there, the oil has to get back to a temperature within a certain specific period of time. Otherwise, you have undercooked chicken. Mm-hmm. And that product won't do it. And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't really think about it that deeply to know that if it doesn't do it right, then everything's wrong. Your timing is wrong. Your drop times, everything is screwed up. So it has to work within the system. I think POS system's probably the same. You can't just go buy any POS system because it has to work with the software. It has to integrate.
Right. It has to integrate with their system. And and in most franchise systems, speaking of the point of sale systems, most franchise systems sweep from that system all the data that they need to have. And they can't do that unless they can control the system. So, yeah.
Good deal. Let's talk about item 9.
Item 9.
Ease obligations.
So that's a chart or table, depending on how you want to describe it. And it's a list of all the obligations that any franchisee is going to have to their franchisor. And I have the chart.
Sure you do.
There you go. So I figured visuals are good, right? I think I have the chart here, so let me pull it up. What were we on? 9, right?
Yep.
So here we go. So you can see that it's a chart.
Yep.
And things such as whether who's responsible for if it's franchisee that's responsible for site selection and the lease that will be in it, pre-opening purchases, site development, what the franchisee's obligations are for training and opening it up, all the fees, the operations manual, all of those obligations that a franchisee has, along with what the section is in the franchise agreement. Because again, remember that these disclosures are just that. They are disclosures. And the agreement is the contract. So this particular item actually tells you where in that franchise agreement, in that contract, it goes back to those particular obligations or requirements that you as a franchisee have. So it ties the two documents together, the franchise disclosure, the item, with the actual contract, and it'll tell you exactly where it is. But if things such as what are your insurance requirements, what do you have to have as insurance, what kinds of advertising are your obligations, all of your requirements will be listed or should be listed in item 9.
You know, when a lot of people get FDDs, they look at item 7 and item 19.
Right.
But
I know.
something like item 9 is kind of important, isn't it?
We're going to talk about item 19. That's a fun one. That we need to have extra time on, but item 9 is very important. Unless of course you hire an attorney who's going to go through the franchise agreement with you and go through all of those obligations, explaining to you what they mean and what they say, and when they go through the actual contract.
Yeah. I think it's
yes,
important maybe to do both, don't you think? I mean, if you're going to use an attorney, great, but shouldn't you read it yourself as well?
I recommend to my clients in my initial free consultation with every prospective client of mine who's a prospective franchisee that they read through those 23 items of disclosure, and we talk about it. I tell them what I said in the last segment, 5, 6, and 7 I think are the most important, but read through all of them. Very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good. All right, so item 10, financing. This shouldn't take us very long.
No, this should take us about a minute, because what it is just saying if the franchisor provides financing to its franchisees or not. And if they do, what are the terms? Boom, we're done.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
So 95% of franchisors do not provide financing. They have template language that says we refer you to third parties. The 5% that do, it's just so that everybody's on a level playing field, so that everybody knows that there is an opportunity there for financing, that it's not hidden for some people, not for other people, correct?
Right. Most people do not go the route of franchisor financing.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's offered at all.
Yeah. So if there's anything that's probably less important, that's probably the one. Let's look at item 11.
Item 11.
Franchisors, assistance, advertising, computer systems, and training.
Absolutely. So that's another really important one, actually, because it's going to tell you as a prospective franchisee, well, what is this franchisor going to do for me? I love the brand. I love everything about it. I've gone to Discovery Day. I'm in love with the whole thing. The people are great. I want to do it. But what am I going to get for that? That's what's going to be in item 11. So it's going to talk about what is the franchisor's assistance to the franchisee. Are they going to help you with site selection? Do they have local realtors that are out there, if you're brick and mortar, to help find good locations, negotiate the business terms of the lease, you know, the rent and square footage and all those kinds of things? Are they going to help with training? Are they going to, what are the pre-opening obligations that the franchisor has to me as a potential franchisee? For example, training, site selection, and all the other kinds of things that they're going to be doing before you open, helping with, maybe they have an architect that can come out and help with showing me the build out and what's recommended and the leasehold improvements that I need to do in that location. What are the post-opening obligations that a franchisor has? And they're going to be things like national advertising or product development. I made some notes, that's what I'm looking at, or that point of sale system that we talked about and how that connects and updating that and so forth, and maybe software that you license from them that they're going to keep current and that they're going to provide. They provide an operations manual that you're going to have to abide by as a prospective or as a franchisee. And that operations manual is going to tell you how to run this business and give you advice on that. And they should be giving you advice on that as well. And then ongoing training and support are some of the other things that happen post opening. So
There
those
are
are,
other manuals too, aren't there? Often there's training manuals, there are opening manuals, there might be marketing manuals, there could be HR manuals.
they could be, or they could all be in one big manual.
Yeah.
I've seen systems where literally a manual will take up a whole wall because it's just huge. It just has everything that you just mentioned all in one operations manual.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the system.
Excellent. Anything else about that particular section you want to talk about, or should we talk about item 12, territory?
Well, I do mention training, because training is going to be discussed as to what you're going to be getting. You're going to be getting X amount of hours on X topics, and the location of where those are going to be held. All of that's going to be covered in what the training is. So that's important. So you have an understanding, well, are they going to just cut me off and leave me out there to hang? And this is going to tell you the answer to that.
Yeah, and just to add an additional thought to that. So this tells you what the criteria are, what the obligations are, but it doesn't tell you if it's any good. And that's the thing I always tell people, is everyone wants to look at FDDs because they want to find out, hey, is this a good franchise? In my opinion, FDDs don't tell you if that franchise is any good. It can tell you if a franchise is bad. It can give you red flags. It can tell you the obligations. But is the training good training? Are the franchisees coming out feeling like they're prepared to run a business? Is the support what it needs to be? The only way you can get that really is by interviewing franchisees, by getting out and doing your due diligence. It's not going to come from this document, really.
There is no question, Rick. And in fact, I have a blog post that's my top 10 favorite questions to ask existing franchisees. I think that's even the title of the blog post. And I share that when I'm introduced to anybody just contacts me directly from a former client or however, I send that out with a group of links, one of which is my favorite, my blog post on my favorite top 10 questions. And one of the questions is, what do you think of the training and support that you've received up to this point? And I think that's really important, because that's what you're buying. You're buying into a franchise, which is a brand that is experienced, knowledgeable, and that you're going to duplicate in some fashion based on the experience that this franchisor provides to you, because of the experience that they've already had. They've already supposedly gone through the birth and the growth pains of what?
We would hope so, yes.
Yeah, exactly. We hope so. They've already gone through all of that, hopefully. It's a proven system, hopefully. And now you're going to enter into that system that is already supposedly a proven system with the knowledge that they are offering and training you in.
Yeah. Very good. Item 12, territory.
Yeah. And again, I don't think this is one we need to spend a lot of time. It's just, how do they define a territory? And that's really a question that every franchise system answers differently. Territories can be based on zip codes. They can be based on counties. They can be based on municipalities. They can be based on a population. They can be based on all kinds of things. And what I think you need to know with the territory item is, what are the exclusions from it? And is it exclusive territory or non-exclusive territory? Is it, if it's brick and mortar, is your territory just that one location, and they could open one, a block away that competes against you? And what are the exclusions? As I started to say, are universities excluded? Are airports excluded? And if you're in a Popeyes, for example, I'm almost 100% sure they would be, because
yes.
I'm sure of it. Those are called alternative designated territories, because they are alternates, airports, and their universities, and they'll sell them.
You can only access those through certain corporations. And Host Marriott, for example, is they control those venues. You don't have those excluded. You will never be in them, because you have to go through the specific people to get in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to look at in the territory description. How are they defining your territory? Is it exclusive? And what are the carve-outs?
Yeah, if you look at territories, there are geographic territories where you can operate within. Then you have others that are locationally radius type territories, and others don't have any exclusive territory, but they have exclusive customer relationships potentially. So there's a variety of ways that it's done. I guess the other thing to keep in mind is that This tells you how a territory is created, but your actual territory will be something you work with the franchisor and will be actually a part of your franchise agreement when you sign it, correct?
Yeah, and that is something that actually any prospective franchisee should be negotiating, because
Okay.
it's not a black and white
That's correct.
determination until they sign that franchise agreement with the territory listed in it.
Yep.
So if you are, especially in this day and age, we have a lot of home-based service businesses that aren't brick and mortar. And for those, I'm seeing so many of those right now in my practice. And those home-based service businesses, so you're running the business out of your home. um, what's your territory? And if that territory is broad, that's great, because it allows you to sell or market whatever that service is to a much broader group. And I think it's a really important thing to consider. If you have no restrictions on it, just understand you're going to have competition from every other franchisee in that system,
Yeah,
along with anybody else that's competitor that's not in the system.
absolutely. Absolutely. Good deal. Let's talk about one you probably enjoy, trademarks.
I do like
Item
trademarks.
13.
Um, I do like trademarks. So a lot of people don't even know what a trademark is. So a trademark is that logo. It's the brand. So if you think of McDonald's, we all know McDonald's. The brand, the name McDonald's is trademarked. The golden arches are trademarked. There, you know, the Ronald McDonald is trademarked. You know, there's lots of trademarks, but those are all logos, and you recognize them, and you think McDonald's when you see them. That's a trademark.
Yep.
So a trademark with a franchise is a critical element. You want to make sure that it is a registered live trademark. I will tell you that 6 weeks ago, we had a brand we were looking at that was a relatively new franchise. They listed 4 trademarks in item 13, 4 of them. And when we checked them, which is part of our process when we're doing an evaluation or review, all 4 trademarks on the US Patent and Trademark Office's website were dead trademarks. So yeah, what does that mean? That's pretty serious, right? And as I said, nobody's auditing the words or the numbers that are in this FDD, except for the financial statements that are audited by an accounting firm. And we'll talk about that in the exhibit section when we talk about exhibits. So you can't, it'd be nice to take these all at face value and hope that they are all accurate. But in that situation, there's one blaring example of one that was not accurate. They were all dead trademarks, and that's a serious problem. If you are brick and mortar and you have a trademark that goes dead, and trademarks can lapse over time, they can be challenged over time. So it's very important that those trademarks be checked. But if you're investing in a brick and mortar brand and their trademark isn't a registered trademark, or it's dead trademark, you have a huge risk, because you're going to put up signs and market under that brand and bring in customers, have maybe menus or signage or flyers and so forth with that brand and trademark and logo on it, and all of a sudden be told that you can't use it any longer, which is a very real possibility. So you have to be very careful with the trademarks, and people just skim right over that section.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, a lot of people do. They skip right over it. If there's a problem with the trademark, it's obviously a big issue. One thing, there is a misunderstanding I find when I work with people, though. A lot of people, I say, when you buy a franchise, what are you buying? And they say the brand name, the trademark. And the reality is, as a franchisee, you don't own that trademark. You don't have rights to the trademark. As a matter of fact, you can't even use the trademark in your corporate identity. You can only use it in your DBA.
In most cases, some brands do allow it. They'll allow you to say budget blinds of Boca Raton.
Yeah, but that's only a DBA. That's not the actual corporate name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say there are some brands that allow you to use it in corporate name. I think it's a mistake, because
I was going to say, I'd say it's a mistake, probably.
Yeah, it dilutes the brand, it dilutes the trademark, and it's a very bad practice, but there are some that allow it.
Gotcha.
The trademark is very important. I think you're right. It's most important if it's a problem. I mean, it's most critical, obviously, if there's an issue with it. But most people just gloss over that and assume it's correct, but it might not be.
Item 14. Item 14. Patents, copyrights, and proprietary information.
Yeah, that's another one that pretty much you can pretty likely skip over, because unlike the trademark one, when you're buying a franchise, you're getting a right to license a trademark, to your point before. You don't own it, but you're getting a right to use it.
Yep.
With patents, copyrights, and other kind of proprietary information, if there are actual franchises in which what your rights are is to license the patent. And in those, it's very important to read this section. But the majority of franchises that most people listening to this are going to be looking at, this particular section is pretty not particularly relevant. The copyright section, yes, there might be marketing materials and so forth that you would need to know that are copyright protected. There may be some other intellectual property rights that the franchisor has that you will have licenses and rights to. But by and large, this section is not going to be
Yeah.
a critical section to most people listening to this.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I haven't seen, I really never even heard any issues with regard to this one. Generally, it's not usually a big thing. So it's one that I would generally not pay much attention to. So listen, that is the end of part 4. So again, if you want to get hold of Nancy directly or myself, at the end of this video will be our name and contact information. I'm going to go ahead and close this down, and then we're going to move on to part 5.
Great.